Hi everybody and welcome to your online session to do with your module patient-centred practice, and this is around patient-centred practice and work. My name is Michelle Agus. I'm a lecturer in occupational therapy. So the learning outcomes are identify and evaluate key issues in relation to how individuals' health, belief or behaviour can impact on their own health state. Explain how your own behaviour, beliefs and professional practice and approach to decision making can contribute to the development of a collaborative therapeutic relationship and in planning management strategies to meet their management needs. So the session aim is to understand the importance of work in recovery. The session objectives: we want you to have an understanding of the health benefits of work and the evidence of supporting this, have an awareness of some literature and some employment legislation, be able to identify and overcome obstacles to return to work, think about applying the biopsychosocial model to health to work issues, and to have an awareness of initiatives to prevent long-term sickness absence. So what I want you to do is first activity is I want you to consider two questions. First of all, just write down what does work mean to you? So what does the word work mean to you? And why do you think people work? I've created a Google document that you can access by clicking here. So if you just want to pause this screencast and come out of this and get the link through the PowerPoint that I've put on your Blackboard site. So there's a copy of this PowerPoint on your Blackboard site with all the embedded links. So if you click there, that will take you to a Google document where you can write some comments. So what is work? This is a definition from the Oxford Dictionary. So it's an activity involving physical or mental effort done in order to get a result, or physical or mental effort or activity directed towards the production or accomplishment of something. So both them there imply that it's doing something to get a result or an end result. Nowhere does that say about any kind of payment. So work could be voluntary work, it could be housework, it could be gardening, it could be anything that involves physical or mental effort where you end up with a result. So it sort of broadens your perspective a bit on work. So why do you think people work then? What I want you to do is another activity. So again, you need to pause this screencast, get your PowerPoint up so you can have a look, you can get the embedded link. And I want you to download a picture of what work means to you and copy and paste it into this Google document here. I've already put one on there so you can have a look at what work means to me. And if you could all do the same and then just write your name next to the picture. And I think it'll give us a real sort of broad perspective on what work means to different people. So the next thing I'd like you to do is a Diamond 9 exercise. So if you could all, hopefully you'll have got a sheet of paper, pen and paper, because I'd asked you to get that ready prior to this online learning. I want you to take the piece of paper and make it into 9 pieces. You might want to pause this while you do that. Once you've done that, I want you to write down some ideas. These are some ideas for you to write on your 9 pieces of paper, which are ideas around come from some Waddell and Burton, who did some research into work, and these were some of the things that when they had focus groups with people, this is what they said work meant to them. So if you just write down, pick 9 of them, and then write them down on your 9 sheets of paper. Again, just pause this while you do that. What I'd like you to do now with your 9 sheets of paper with the different reasons on them, I want you to prioritise them in the shape of a diamond, as it is on the picture here. I want you to put the most important one at the top and the least important at the bottom. Once you've done that, I want you to take a picture and upload it to your Pebblecard account, along with a reflection as to how it felt doing this exercise. So you just might want to pause this while you do that. So what I want you to think about when you do your reflection on Pebble Pad is, why did you put this certain one at the top? Why did you put these in the middle? Why was that one at the bottom? I want you to really rationalise your decision-making process as to why they put them in that order. So we're just moving on slightly now. I want to think about what are some about the assumptions about work. The low skilled jobs. You've got that assumption that low education, no qualifications, from economically deprived areas, economically and socially mobile. Assumptions about high skilled jobs. It comes with high intelligence, higher education, and more middle and upper class. And how does society view those people who don't work? So we've had lots of media coverage, not as much recently, but a couple of years ago, where we had Benefits Britain, things like that. And there was a very negative sort of perception of people who received benefits. It used to be called incapacity benefit, but that changed to employment support allowance, just to try and get rid of that negative perception around people who are on benefits. Health at work. So there was an independent review by Black and Frost, and they said the right work is actually good for our health and well-being. So if you're in a good job, it's good for your physical and mental health. Much absence or working activity follows common health conditions which are compatible with work given in the right support. The longer someone is off work, the harder it is to get back to work. It's actually only 4 weeks absence until some of the unhealthy behaviours and perceptions have set in. And significant human and social costs to sickness absence. So if you want to click that link there, that actually gives you an idea of some of the cost implications due to sickness absence. So this is a case study of Mary, and she's, if you just click that button there, then that's me, obviously, pretending to be Mary. If you listen to that case study, I want you just to note down what are the key issues, what responsibilities has Mary got, what do you think the employer's responsibilities are, and if you were Mary's employer, what would you advise? So you might just want to pause this while you come out of this screencast, open the PowerPoint and listen to the case study. So just moving on again, we're looking at employment legislation. So we've got the Health and Safety at Work Act, again another hyperlink for you to look at there, the Equality Act and the Employment Rights Act. And there's a screencast there if you click on there about employment legislation that will go into more detail about all the different legislation. So another part of the legislation is about reasonable adjustments for workers with disabilities or health conditions. So employers are under an obligation to make reasonable adjustments to make sure workers with disabilities or physical or mental conditions aren't substantially disadvantaged when doing their jobs. This applies to all workers, including trainees, apprentices, contract workers, business partners. And again, there's a hyperlink there to look into some more reading there on reasonable adjustments. One thing to say about this, the key term here is reasonable, so it has to be reasonable to the employer. So say, for instance, you had somebody in a wheelchair who was working for a self-employed company, a family-run business. Would it be reasonable for that family-run business to put a lift in just to accommodate that one person? You've got to think whether it's reasonable. So reasonable adjustments could include changing the recruitment process so the candidate can be considered for a job, doing things another way, such as allowing someone with social anxiety disorder to have their own desk instead of hot desking, making physical changes like installing a ramp for a wheelchair user or an audio-visual alarm for a deaf person, letting a disabled person work somewhere else, such as on the ground floor, changing their equipment, for instance providing a keyboard if they've got arthritis, allowing employees who become disabled to make phased return to work, including flexible hours or part-time working, and offering training opportunities, recreation and refreshment facilities. The stats. So in 2016, 137.3 million working days were lost to sickness. Men are less likely to be off sick than women. Public sector workers are more likely to be off sick than private sector, and healthcare rate is 0.6% points higher than the public sector average. There's lots of reasons behind some of them stats. So the men less likely to be off sick than women. It's probably due to the fact that women have more sort of carer responsibilities, maybe. Public sector workers are more likely to be off than private sector. Obviously, public sector workers get full pay for 6 months, so that could have an implication, and that's the same implication for the last one. So how to support your individuals, so you can get advice on reasonable adjustments through your Job Centre Plus. Also, Access to Work's a really good place to signpost people to. There's more detail about employer obligations and how to meet them on the Equality and Human Rights Commission. And liaise with OTs, or you can make referrals, because there's lots of vocational rehabilitation OTs out there. So just time for a quick break there, and then we'll go into part 2 of the online learning.